Did you know that one tiny little field in Salesforce can make or break all of your plans to go up market? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's get into it. Hi, everybody. I'm Graham Bischoff, sometimes affectionately called Salesforce Yoda. And I've gotten that moniker being in this industry for 15 plus years. And in that time, I've been lucky enough to work at companies or consult for companies that have really found a good product market fit and decided, hey, let's go up market. We think we're going to have a much better customer base there, or at least that's going to be additive to the thing that we're doing now for small businesses. And that conquest is great. And you get started, finally find out there may be a little bit of a wall when it comes to account hierarchies. Hard stop. And this is what I want to go over today. That one little field takes a lot of planning and understanding and dedication to pull off right. And that's why I'm bringing those hard-won lessons to you. Now, today we're going to be going over why the account hierarchy structure is really important for upmarket growth. 2, what types of account structures exist. And then 3, just some common pitfalls that I've gone through that you don't have to. So let's begin. Okay, so we're going to be talking about account hierarchies in your CRM. Fair enough, but I do really get excited about talking about account hierarchies, which seems odd, but it's not odd if you think about what it can enable. And what it can enable is a lot of growth within a company. I saw this specifically first at Yelp. Then we went on to different companies that we were consulting for, brand names that you've probably heard of. And I really saw every single one of them really up their game and, well, quite frankly, their valuation once they took this on and really understood how to conquer that larger market segment. To get up market, you really got to make sure you're identifying the right decision makers. Let's be honest, we don't want to pick the wrong guy. But also, we don't want to get in each other's way, right? You don't want your SMB rep calling single locations and talking to someone who has no authority to make decisions, especially when your enterprise rep has been talking to the C-suite the entire time and buttering them up. And to accomplish a lot of this, you want to put in a really good set of rules of engagement. Now, what are rules of engagement? They're literally just the rules for sales reps to talk back and forth with each other. Like, you don't want a sales rep calling up a location that enterprise level person is talking to the C-suite, because they're going to come in guns blazing being like, don't you communicate with my clients or any of their locations trying to close this deal that they've been working for several months. And when you don't have those rules to really help your sales organization understand how to coordinate those complex organizations, you can have a real fight in your hands. Meow. Honestly, it does help to really facilitate and unlock a lot of potential once your sales team has these rules down. What you can do is you can then go to customers and you say hey, do we cross-sell business units? Do we go up and down the corporate ladder selling different deals to different teams? Or do we, modify our product offerings for the best fit for these complex organizations? And now, I know that might have been a bit of word salad.
And we are truly local, mobile, social.
And we're completely so-mo-low.
And we're molo-so. We're low-mo-so, bro.
We were so-low-mo, but now we're mo-low-so. No, mo-so-low.
Oh, the 2010s. How I miss you. But seriously, there are a lot of things that your sales executives will be really happy about that they can execute on once you've kind of figured out the playing field and where to find decision makers and who on the team is supposed to go after who and how you guys are supposed to coordinate together. And you might be wondering, how do we do that? And that's exactly what we'll get into next. Now look, there are a lot of complex ways to structure an organization. It's almost like there are people sitting around thinking about how this can be more complex than it needs to be. Lawyers. But seriously, we're going to break these down to probably the 3 most common types, which is legal entities, business units, and physical locations. And most of those cover almost every scenario you have, and so we'll go through them next. But let's start with legal entities. It's a good intuitive one to start with first, because everyone knows what a legal entity is. To have a corporation, you have to sign up and become a legal entity, and then those legal entities can own other legal entities. So a parent company is a very good example of that. They're very intuitive, but they're hard to find out. It can be very difficult to find out who owns other companies just from like public records. Like public companies are probably the only ones that happens to. What really gets complicated is when you look into partial ownership. King Solomon was like, no, go ahead, cut the baby in half. It doesn't work out so well. Can't they just get divorced like normal parents?
Are you asking me for a divorce?
Yay! 2 Christmases!
Also, like, subsidiaries aren't always as intuitive as you would think, right? So, especially when you get into larger corporations, like Microsoft, for instance, like they own LinkedIn and they own Activision. And that's a weird thing to sell into. It's very rare that you have a product offering that applies to a tech giant, a social media company, and a gaming company all at the same time. But hey, everyone needs marketing, right? So maybe you do.
That's pretty genius.
Sex sells, Gwen. Sex sells.
But in each one of those is a better model. And that model is business units. Business units are a great way to structure account hierarchies. The reason they're really nice is because they're easily discoverable, right? You can talk to someone about their internal structure of their company, how it all works. Like it's an easy phone call to figure out where everything's going. And once you're in, interdepartmental referrals are like leads of all leads. They're the good leads. But, business units aren't perfect and you want to use them appropriately. So they're probably the most common, but they do have some downfalls. So when you run into these other areas, you probably want to look at some of the other ways to structure the account hierarchy. So the first is subdomains, right? So if these different business units don't have subdomains, basically you're going to end up with a lot of domains that are similar, which means you're going to end up with a lot of email addresses that are similar. And when you do that, your marketing automation systems will get really, really angry or just really, really dumb when it comes to routing those to the appropriate places. And so you'll try to send out a marketing campaign to a particular business unit, but you can't group by the domain. It may convert a lead into an account that, because it's like, oh, well, the domain matches here and it matches there, and I don't know which one is going to do it, so I'm just going to randomly assign it. Like, you can come up with a lot of problems when you're trying to do that. And so that's one of the big downfalls is everyone has the same domain. That may not be the structure that you want. You may want to break that up a little bit or figure out some automation or a manual way to kind of discover that. And the second one that's a really big trade-off is addresses and shipping. So both from a billing perspective and shipping, those are the two big ones. Like if you have a singular billing location or billing address and you have a singular billing contact that isn't in those business units, like multiple business units do that. So if they have a procurement department, which is quite common in most companies, like that can make things a little bit more difficult or a little bit harder to have because you have the billing person who's not in that business unit, is in another business unit, but they still have to be part of that deal and they have to be a contact on that account. It makes it very complicated. Also with shipping can become extremely complicated. In fact, that's a good segment into the next type of structure, which is locations. You've heard this in retail, location, location, location. And that's super important, right? This is just a different type of hierarchy. And this is usually typically gone over for retail, life sciences, depending on that. Anywhere there's like really complex logistics and parts moving back and forth, locations become really, really important. But the most common one may be franchisee. And now you'll see a lot of people utilize custom objects for these just because of the complexity around locations. There can be a lot of them. People don't always want accounts associated with them. But I don't recommend that. I actually recommend putting them in an account hierarchy. I think it's super important. It'll give you a little heartburn sometimes with the amount of accounts that you have to put in there for some of these locations. But I think it's well worth it. The one thing you do want to make sure, though, is you type things. So you want to use a record type or a type field to designate a differentiation of those things. That can be super important. But, types in that designation, it's a pitfall. And so that's actually a really good segue into our next segment, which is pitfalls. All right, so there are a few more pitfalls that we want to watch out for. Okay, and the first pitfall we actually want to get into is rollups and reporting. So this is really crucial. Most people, when they do account hierarchies, just look at the silly screen that you have that Salesforce provides or that whatever the CRM you have may provide that just shows a list of accounts. And that's actually not that helpful. You really need a lot more detail there. And so that can be very difficult when it comes to rollups and reporting. Because reporting on a hierarchy structure in general is very important. Most reports in any CRM really aren't built for rollups in the way that account hierarchy is done. You can roll up across objects normally. So like you can roll up opportunities and they're ACV or amounts or whatever it is to an account, that's very common. But rolling up in an object itself is not nearly as common. And so this is such a big problem that I actually wrote my own Salesforce App Exchange package. It's perfectly free. I just wrote it because I was tired of dealing with this stuff, but it does some cool stuff. It tells you where in the hierarchy this account is. It can roll things up within the object, because most rollup helper or Dolores or all these other things that normally roll things up don't actually do inner object rollups well either. So there's just not a lot of good support. So I built this application. I'll put the link to it down in the comments. You can use it, not use it. It's free. I just wrote it because I was tired of doing things. And that really, really helps put together a good comprehensive way to report. So there's going to be a lot of rollups and automation when it comes to reporting on account hierarchy. So you just want to remember that that's a really big deal and you have to pay attention to it. So that one of the pitfalls you want to make sure you do there is get your reporting out first and then really think through strategically how those rollups are going to work for your reports. Because if you have 5 locations, it's really hard to roll all those up to show that in an ARR dashboard, especially when that could be reporting some of it SMB, some of it could be reporting to enterprise. If you're doing team selling, it's a whole other complexity level that we don't even want to get into. So that's the first one. So there are some other managed packages too. You don't have to use mine. Traction is a good one that I've seen utilized around. That I would recommend. Now that's a whole other package for a lot of other stuff, but within that they do have good account hierarchy tracking. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is territories, all right? Because, no one loves anything more than territories. Okay, it's not going to be that bad. At least I hope it's not going to be that bad. But in this part of what we want to talk about when it comes to account hierarchies is territories are actually really important, especially how you segment different teams in sales to do that, right? So if you have an enterprise team, a mid-market team, or SMB team, or even if you just have an enterprise team and an SMB team, your territory systems have to be different as well, right? And you have to consider should these overlap? Should these not overlap? And that's really going to be based upon the rules of engagement that we talked about earlier. So you want to be very concise on how do we split up these accounts based on the account hierarchy, right? Is everything going to an enterprise rep? And if so, then they're going to be taking up the majority of all accounts that exist in an industry. And if so, what's left over for the other teammates? And that's really going to diversify how you hire and the way that you go about tackling accounts. So just make sure you put a lot of planning into that, and any discussion that you have around upmarket or going upmarket in terms of sales restructuring, all of that's included, so that people understand this is severely going to impact how long you have to think about territory systems and how those go into it. And then finally, the big pitfall you want to prepare for probably most is just client acquisitions. Corporations acquire stuff all the time. One might be in one hierarchy and then it goes into another hierarchy. So you have to be really careful about this. And it is, quite frankly, just a data nightmare. One of the common things that we've seen is you actually create 2 accounts, you deactivate one and you activate another one. That comes with its own downfalls. I don't always recommend that. Really what you want to be able to do is take one, port it over, but that's a huge data lift. So these are the trade-offs you're going to have to make, right? Either living with potentially duplicate data or moving the data from one account to another account. Because what you don't want to have happen is when one company gets acquired, all of its case structure, its product, its opportunities, all the contracts that you have with it may not move over with it, and they may stay with that original company. And so that can be really hard to separate out that specific account as a child from all of its opportunities, cases, or whatever else you're establishing with it in that relationship that you had with them. Hopefully you can move all that stuff over. They have really good acquisition contracts and all that stuff does, but it's very rarely the case that everything moves over. You're usually going to have some duplication, and you either have to A, leave it where it was and create a duplicate account, or B, just leave that stuff over there and then reduplicate whatever you're going to have on your side. So those are the main things that you want to look out for when you're doing that. So those are some pretty big topics. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's fun to think about, but you're not going to get as much time as you need to do a lot of these things. So you really got to prioritize. You really want to make sure reporting and rollups those are super important. So I highly recommend them. But then you just want to make sure as you're doing a lot of these things that you're just understanding that there's going to be a lot of holes that you're not going to be able to fill. And as long as you know what those holes are and you know what those risks are, you'll be pretty good. Most of the companies that I've seen that have done really well in this space, they didn't think through it fully, to be quite frank. They evolved as they went on. They had a few moments where they really put some thought and time into figuring out, rules of engagement and territory systems and things like that, but they didn't do them all at once. They kind of piecemealed them out as best they could. So don't beat yourself up if you can't tackle everything at once. This is a heavy topic with a lot of things going on here, and it's the most unsexy thing in the world, honestly. It's true, like total nerd topic, but super important to making sure that you and the business systems team is really successful in helping the business grow and pointing a lot of these things out and making sure that your executive staff is thinking about them. But okay, that's it. That's what we got for today. I hope that was really helpful. Like I literally could talk for hours on this. So as always, please like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. But this seriously is a topic that I love. So if you have comments, if there's something I didn't go over today, if you think there are pitfalls that I missed that are really important, please put some comments down there. Let me know what you think. We may do another video. We'll probably do another video on this because I do like it that much. But we really want to hear from you. Like, was this helpful? Are there topics that you want us to diverge into when we do a second video? But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.